Okay, I'd like to welcome Miles. Good to see you.
Miles to the radio,
Miles.
Irish share of Pirate Radio.
We want to talk to you about what's happening now at the time globally. We kind of have a good idea from history and of things that happened and what's going on with the New World Order and everything else. So with limited time that we have today, I'd just like to get your take on what you think is happening now.
Right.
With the people, with the globe.
I'll let the logo for the Irish here, the Irish, that's the bloody Irish.
Give it a plug if you want, yeah.
No, this is actually, just before we came, my friend Anna from Norway strangely appeared on the phone. This is actually part of her idea, and this is intrinsic to the Basis project. Now the Basis, this is a bit of a horn blowing, a trumpet blowing thing, but the symbolism is very simple. Stop this. Okay, this is not an alien. This is a transgenic, transhumanized human made into a generated life form or slave being, and we did it before. Now, very recently in some of the interviews I've been doing, being whistleblowers come in left, right and centre or just seep up through the carpet. One of these beings, which is not extraterrestrial, get the ET thing out of your head. We are dealing with alien, non-human beings and creatures, but it's right here amongst us in our society, intricate to our whole social network, and they look like us. Right? Okay,
so let's go down the rabbit hole. Are you talking about even going down the route of the hollow earth theory?
But forget the hollow earth theory. That's a could be, maybe an absolutely definite. But Anne, name designation Anne, was a little being, very thin, quite frail, transgenic human, slave worker, slave being, who was living in a house near Birmingham. She got wherever she came from. She was back in society, or not back in society, but living as a small person. And what the Basis project, which is now 20 years, I'm former Irish UFO Research Centre, and we got one of the guys still here after 40, 35 years. God, I had more hair there. So the point is, these round-eyed transgenic creatures are going to be made into a slave labour force. This comes from our past. One of the key things about Irwin's data, which connects with other data based on the European UFO Survey, French European-based database, again they don't exist anymore, but is that we have been here before. We've gone through this process before. Now what seems to be happening is, as we go through the Mobius loop, metaphorically speaking, or the infinity symbol, metaphorically speaking, it looks like we've got an opportunity to correct things. And we've got one chance to do this. What's happening is that the creatures which were previously passed into oblivion for their terrible crimes, etc., the last time, are back, and they're back inside humans, taking control of humanity, using the jinn as an ally to take control of us, create the new version of these sort of grey type beings. We made the greys effectively. When we say we, the collective human family in the past. Now the human family has got a few, shall we say, half brothers in it, which aren't human. The crux of the situation is that all humanity is extraterrestrial. We are here in a very special or very different time-space series of complex energetic fields. We won't go into the details. It's represented in some respects by the mandala, in where higher consciousness, where you have to navigate many different versions of reality and dimension to escape out. In other words, you don't go straight out of here. You've got to navigate out through a series of dimensional inversions and portals and pathways. And the secrets to that are in plain sight in the symbols which we use every day, and in the standing stones and the ancient knowledge from those stones. Those stones can tell us something. They are currently operating as existing gates for other entities and beings coming in and using them. The key to it is that we've got to look at the ancient past. We're living in an environment, especially in Ireland, as opposed to Ireland, where this region of the grasslands of Europe are part of several places on the earth where humanity re-emerged after some great catastrophe. Now, the knowledge base that was here, and this is not a racial thing, this is to do with a knowledge and a higher knowledge of what we were in the past. We had a much higher knowledge database of understanding, which must have been off-world.
Yeah.
The positions of the standing stones, now symbolized in many cases by our existing worshipping structures like churches or great monuments, these right across the planet have a mathematical, interdimensional, hyperspatial reasoning for being where they are and what they did. What's happened is we have an enemy, a terrifying, lethal enemy, which has arrived, exploited us collectively, taken control of our existence, and logically anybody who could see, anybody who had the knowledge, male or female, wise man, wise woman, anybody who could see, or anybody who in future years who could see, and right now this represents right now the new children. We have one generation left to get through this. We, the current generation of our age group, have got sufficient knowledge to add to the database that these young bright kids have got, because they're born with this data now.
Yeah.
And this is part of an epigenetic pre-programming by our grandfathers.
Well, Dolores
or
Cannon,
grandmothers, more accurately.
Dolores Cannon talks about the 3 waves of people, and you had the first wave which kind of started it, and they were heir parents, and then the second wave is us, and the third wave is the children. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So right now, the little 5-year-olds. I mean, at a recent conference, I was at this lovely little girl from the Isle of Man. She must be about maybe 4, maybe 5 years old. And we're having breakfast at a hotel, and the father's sort of sitting there having breakfast, and the father says, my daughter wants to speak to you. And she's a very shy girl, very, very nice, and she's hanging around her father's legs, shy as man, I'm doing peekaboo and all this. And she wants to ask this little question that every little 5-year-old or 3 or 4, she's, call her 5 years old, wants to ask, and where did we come from? And it wasn't a question, it was, do you know the answer to the question I already know the answer to? And I said, we are stardust, we are from the stars. And she smiled, but she already knows our origins are off-world. I don't want to use the extraterrestrial term, because the extraterrestrial term is an old flat earth science trapdoor for consciousness. If you say extraterrestrial, it means nothing's happening here, it must be happening up there, far, far away, therefore nothing to worry about, carry on.
So what's happening now with the powers that be globally? I mean, are we on the seesaw now where we need to tip that in our favour, in our balance, or are they still in control?
The powers that be are now, I think, have now been fully taken over by the enemy, which wishes to completely destroy time-space, the actual fabric of matter itself. And the first thing, one of the things they're doing is to attack the hyper-energetic structure of Mother Nature itself, the force fields and energetic structures of Mother Nature itself. which communicate with all life. Now the jinn are in on this as well. All the demonic entities are in on this. They will go as well, and they better understand this. These energetic beings, which some people call them from the astral, they're working with various Masonic and other forms of societies. They're doing all these rituals, all short-circuiting natural law, all short-circuiting basic universal law. Think they can get away with it like all criminals, and they're all thinking that they're God's gift, or well, that's the wrong term.
Devil's
gift. Well, not even that. Devil again. The devils. All these terms are very. They're triggering terms because there's so much disinformation on this. But they all think they can get away with something. Well, it's not going to happen this time. They're going to be wiped out, and that does. These entities which have done this before have done this and been cast out to oblivion. Well, they've been able to come back from oblivion. Oblivion is essentially a walled-off hyperspatial trap where you're stuck outside the universes. Well, they find ways around that and come back in.
Do you believe Earth is a prison planet?
I don't like using the belief term because belief is a matter of faith. You have to try and use whatever information you have to hand and come up with a conclusion to that information. And a lot of the information we're dealing with is too broken up, it's too unconnected, and so one has to take an educated guess. Now, essentially, if you're in a turbulent ocean, and the right place to go is only one place to go, and all other options are the wrong place to go, you have to, at one point, have to make a guess, right? Navigate that way, as opposed to that way. So you have to A, realize it's a problem, B, realize that you're in trouble and it's imminent if it hasn't passed us already, and C, act immediately, right? So the logic to the situation, the cyborg agenda is now racing ahead of us, right?
So you're talking about transhumanism.
We're talking transhumanism. We're talking about the agenda to shut this next generation children down, or grossly deform or attack them so that they're hypersensitives and they're not able to action on the database that they're born with.
So do you think the whole kind of vaccination process is part of this?
The vaccination process, along with the fear process, is just fear. I've just come through an airport in London, which is fear. And even the security staff themselves are hyped up to hell. They're triggered to hell. So there is something acting. Now that means that our wake up is a threat to these creatures. And these creatures are plotting the unknitting of all reality in all the universes, and it has to stop here. In some respects, the question was, this is a prison planet. It's not a prison planet. If I'm going to put a belief into it, we are here to sort the problem, and there are many races from many different places who are here to sort the problem. But that in itself is a danger, because it means that whatever's here can use those races to instantly propagate to many different universes and lifetimes and attack their master civilizations. And for this reason, we're locked in on this. Now, that means that there'll be other elements in that exploiting that lock-in, because anything that's been given, any toolbox that's been given to lock us in, will also be available for those who wish to exploit or unlock the toolbox. For instance, everything we do is we give our permissions, given permissions. This is a world we have freedom of choice. Therefore, in order to get us to agree to things, they tell us what they're going to do. Our inaction, i.e. simply say, no, you're not going to do that. We don't give you permission to do that. That's what we have to say. But what we've been doing is we've been saying, oh, well, somebody else will do it. Oh, the Legion of Light from Alpha Centauri and Nibiru will come and sort it out. Everything's fine. No. We have to actively, proactively take action to save this situation. And this is where the black goo comes in. I've got to get me black goo in. You know?
I was waiting for the black goo.
be black goo, and I don't think I've mentioned that word once yet. He's made a hand symbol to me. What was I saying?
Well, we just do a quick synopsis of the black goo.
The black goo seems to be an intelligent life force which has literally been ripped and created in a vacuum of imbalance, because we're not on it. The threat situation is now so severe that the actual structure of existence has actually ruptured and is producing this fundamental intelligent energy which has to correct our problem.
Well, positive and negative.
It's a positive situation, but if we do not take action, if we do not, having identified these problems, and if we do not take action, it doesn't matter what action it is, if we simply, that's what the original pirate radio situation was here in Ireland, where the consciousness here completely changed in the 1980s, and that was started way back in the 70s. Some kind of energetic UFO situation happened then, and that's what was called the intelligence transfer sequence. Now, I think that's actually a term from the computer world, but the basic rule of it is that you're given an opportunity to change positively. If you even make the slightest effort to do so by responding as well as you can with whatever little toolbox you can, but if you've got a huge toolbox, then you've got a lot more action that you can take. If you make that effort, you will get a big wind in your sails.
Well, see, you've just said the magic word, because psychologically we are programmed to take the least path of resistance, and giving both positive and negative, people will go for negative because it takes less energy, because it takes more energy to be positive.
I don't necessarily agree with that.
Well, that's my research and my background.
Yeah, I don't necessarily.
And I can go into depth about that and talk to you about it, but we don't have the time.
I don't actually necessarily agree with that precept, or whatever you call it. But well, maybe that's true. Maybe it's harder to go uphill than it is to go downhill. But entropy, negative entropy, is what we're looking for. It's creative, energetic, intelligent thought. Now, the bottom line is that the black goo, which is called black because it's been found in crude oil. That's where it has been seen, found, and communicated with. And there's a whole history behind that as to what's going on. But it's a sentient fluid.
Just to cut in again, because you're talking about this black goo and you just said that it's sentient. And the first movie that comes to mind is the Spider-Man movie, where it had a similar goo.
Yeah,
which was sentient.
The spider issue is a big one as well.
Yeah, well, but you know, that just came to mind, that you're talking about this intelligent black goo, and yet Hollywood again are brilliant at revealing what they want to do or what.
Yeah, well, they only want to give you that information if it's going to help them. But they also have to communicate to their own followers as well. That's why they have the codes in the film. So that you see the codes, and then that's what they're communicating. It's like heavy set, typeset. Little news items in newspapers. There'll be certain places in the newspaper, there'll be a story, and it will be in a different typeface to the rest of the thing, and that's the story that you just turn to page 5 and that's what I need to know, whatever. It was wonderful. I saw a story in the newspapers about me going to a conference on AIDS. It was way back in the 80s, and it was interesting. That's how that was working. How they communicated that to the others. I first encountered the black goo. I didn't know what it was, but it was a black substance in transmitters which came from BBC and independent broadcast radio sites in the UK, right? Also, I saw it in the former Radio Nova transmitter. Don't do the jingle. The former Radio Nova transmitter, which launched Radio Nova on 88 FM in Dublin,
That's right.
ended up doing Q102's main transmissions from the Sheriff's Mountain transmitter site at the BBC in Derry. Londonderry, Stroke City, God bless the man, he had some sense. Talking about somebody. When that transmitter came back from the BBC transmitter site, it was absolutely full of this black, gooey, energetic substance in the etheric domain. It looked as if literally it had been stuck in black oil. And when I opened it up, it's sort of as if it poured out. And I even made a phone call to somebody about that. They got a message in their mind at the other end of the call, which was like 200 miles away. And they picked up on this, and they couldn't handle it, and they shut down, they put the phone down. Now, the point about it is that talking to people who have had the direct experience of the sentient fluid energetically, and when you're talking to people who have got this or been exposed to this, you switch into a second consciousness that's there, because it's learning, it's inhabiting the body, or it's inhabiting other organisms or whatever, to learn. It's fascinating. This is a raw, sentient, energetics fluid.
Well, it's a positive.
It's anything that's positive if it sees a threat, and it says, if you constitute a threat to us, we will take you out. The bottom line is, if we humanity don't wake up, learn and take action about this problem, and this is the problem, if we converge like that, the black goo and the life-saving force will take whatever the problems are out. So we must remove ourselves from being part of the problem. Otherwise, we are the problem and we will be removed.
And what's the timeline on this, do you
The
know?
timeline is immediate.
Okay.
Now, the point about linear time is that our concept of time is not, time is not fixed. It's very fluidic and dynamic. And right now, the relevant time is rapidly compressing, which is why everybody is saying, gosh, our external reference based on our soul is swinging about, because the relevant time locks are shifting.
Yeah, and they're saying that consciousness it's not that time is speeding up, consciousness is speeding up.
Well, this is the problem, where you assume time to be constant because you're taught time is locked. Einstein came up with this whole relativity thing because he was on a railway line. The only thing that time was relevant to people in real terms is they can catch a train on time, because if the train goes on a linear path across the earth, even though as far as the actual sun is concerned, that point on the earth is still in the same time zone as it goes through the time. So again, I'm mixing concepts here. The thing is, time is not linear. Nothing in existence is linear. If you see something linear, it's being acted on by man or some other kind of intelligence.
But man has made time linear.
Man's concept of time is
linear. Yeah.
But there's not a place on this earth that's at the same time. That's the whole point of where the sun sets. The sun sets here in Dublin. It sets, I think, at least 35, possibly maybe 40 minutes later than it does in London. So, I mean, really, Ireland should have its own time zone, and the northern sections of Scotland and Ireland should have their own time zones, because really because again, the maps tell us that England is north. England and Scotland is north-south like that. It ain't. It's tipped like this, which means the sun arrives there first, and then Ireland's over here, and it's a lot less. It's almost 45 minutes to an hour.
Well, I suppose the best way to explain it is, you know, the way on TV years ago they used to say about the evenings getting dark. But over in Ireland, we could never understand that because it was always bright, and it was the curvature of the earth, the difference between Ireland and England.
Yes. And it was one wonderful time. You tried to tell the television producer in London when he wants to get his shot of Stonehenge with the sun rising at Stonehenge, and he's on air in 15 seconds. You're not going to see the sun at Stonehenge for another 8 minutes. Don't you tell us about that. We know better than you. Well, and he lost his shot because Stonehenge doesn't have the same time. So the concept of time is okay. Let's live with that. The point is that these individuals who have been exposed to the goo were able to explain that energetically it is an etheric substance. It doesn't necessarily have to exist in our solid, what we feel is matter, right? So the spectral focus of the matter that we exist in, where we physically touch, because the boundaries of the matter, this energy, this is an energetic wavefront which has got a certain focus, and that focus, when it hits another force field focus, and it stops. Okay, but other energetic levels of existence are slightly out of that focus, and so therefore they will not converge. They will go past the focus point to their focus point. The thing about the black goo is that it's living or exists in different focus points, so it's dynamic.
So how does that apply to timelines, which we keep hearing about? Well, I keep hearing about
timelines. Basically,
that like Kerry Cassidy has interviewed a few people, and they've said that the powers to be are trying to change the timeline because they're using looking glass technology. But because of the natural laws, every time they try and change it, it keeps going back to the real timeline where we should be.
Well, in some respects, that's what I meant by by our physical body and our soul bodies locking and something shifting it, moving. So our concept of time and actual time it changes. So this is one of the things when you can't time travel with the physical body. It won't work, because the physical body is a physical anchoring in this space-time field.
Yeah.
What you have to do is you then have to take your etheric body essence and re-lock into another version of you somewhere else.
Which is exactly what Ralph Ring said to us when he did the travelling with Otis T. Carr in the craft that they designed. Basically, that's what they were doing. They were travelling through using their consciousness, but when they came back, they still had the items they picked up in the desert when they came back in the ship. And they said, but we never went anywhere. We were just sitting there. Our bodies never went anywhere.
The bodies can't. The physical bodies can't move. If they tried to do them, if this is where some of the abductees, so-called abductees, in my opinion, have got some very nasty genetic problems. They've suffered some form of genetic damage, and I think it's possible they've been exposed to what I think are called ataton particles. Ataton particles, from what I understand, are again, using the term micro and nano really are in inappropriate terms. We're limited by the kind of language one person's dimension is another person's energy level or whatever, so whatever. And one mathematician, and that's the point.
Well, the English language itself is limited.
Yes,
to describe
which is why
things.
if you want a higher form of linguistics, you start using symbols and cutting to the chase on symbols. We have got the database right in front of us. The database is in front of us, and since we're in Ireland and since we're right near the Boyne, with Michael Tazarian's work, which was based on Andrew Power's work, is that as far as this civilization in this zone is concerned, the con trick was the Battle of the Boyne. That was the magical trick which did a linkage, symbolizing moving across the Boyne, which is the galaxy, symbolizing an alien presence coming across a great distance to this zone, so that the bioenergetic people here, who may wake up and know something, again, in our early part of the discussion, anybody who knows, you've got to shut them down in order for this deception to work. The one thing they cannot have is us waking up. So we've got to wake up and act. And the sooner we get the wake up and action as close together as possible, wake up with action. So in the storm, you navigate for the right direction.
How important are the Irish?
The Irish
globally?
The Irish are vital in this, because we're subcoded with a solution. I don't like using the we word there. The Irish are subcoded, and it's not a singular racial application. The Irish are those who know what has to be done, and they can be on any energetic level. So they are not restricted to the so-called Irish.
So are we unique in that kind of way?
We're not unique. There are several other groups, and that came from the original the original Egyptians, but we're only talking this portion. I think we've also got to pull in the Native Americans, who are aware, and the Sasquatch have given us a message, gave me a message literally 2 days ago, the Sasquatch are now going to come back and say hello. They left the human family because they had to, because something really bad came and toxified the human community. The human community must find the toxin and remove it. Now, one of the interesting things about the Bosnian pyramid, and there's arguments whether it's a pyramid or not, the fact is it's producing an energetic signal, a database transmitting somewhere, scalar energy field, which is transmitting from this pyramid-looking hill. The point about it is it was backfilled from the front, from the outer. They were desperate to shut that thing down, or so that whatever was on the outside that was coming wouldn't get to what they had in there. And they, whatever they did, they gated out of there.
And what is it? What do you think it is that's this kind of negative that's affecting mankind, that's affecting the energy and causing problems?
It's with the ritual child attacks which are happening now. All controlling elites now have to go through the Key of Solomon. They have to go through this ritual where they are assaulted in such a way that the Kundalini in the child ruptures the psyche of the brain, not the brain but the mind, and then they become controllable. Now there's a whole generation of those children now grown up. They're taking control in all the relevant governments, companies and societies, and they operate under a hive mind control. And that's another reason for the whole purposes of in terms of Ireland, splitting Ireland up so people don't talk to each other. We adopt a constant mind psyche which will never lock. What we do is you've got to get it to lock.
But do you think that we did that on the weekend with the masses of protests that took place? Even if it's only down on the fundamental level regarding the Irish water and us saying no to it, we had that unity.
Mass protest is an old way of doing it. It's an easy way also of becoming identified to the elite. You just simply say, right, who's doing it? We'll just like, boom, 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 boom. We'll then target those people. And it does have a spiritual essence of bringing people together, and we're uniting physically. To do this, you've got to do this on the subspace domain, right? What you have to do, you have to work at this, you have to work this problem below conscious thought, right? Now, the way to do it below conscious thought is it was taught when we did the pirates here, right? That we had something in Ireland got people to turn these stations on. And nobody knew really what it was. People call it the bug, we've got the pirate bug. And anything which attacked that situation, any governments who attacked that situation, bingo, they were like just blown apart, just blown, did some bang. And all the governments concerned will know who they were and when they did it and who took the action, that whatever happened soon after them and their careers rapidly went out the window. That has to happen. It has to be in the subspace domain, and you'll meet the goo, that sentience in that domain. And if you exist in that domain and communicate in that domain, then when it translates like roots growing out of the ground, where all life comes out of the ground energetically, if you look at a lot of plant life, it's not surviving on sunshine and rainwater. Some plants are growing out of raw rock, and they're getting the energy from the rock. The actual matter in the existence that we live in is all cooperating in a life force field. You've got to communicate and plug into that life force field. Then we can see and think more clearly, and then you action that by where your cognitive thought then comes from. Your cognitive thought is a much higher level. It's got to plug into the inner base of your inner thinking and go down into those roots of where humanity comes from.
Mind you, we always say, don't think, feel.
Well, get in touch with your heart center. Yeah. You know that. And this is one of the things which is we're always constantly under attack, is to separate us from the heart center. Yeah. One of the things that we're being attacked by is this fear thing, and this fear thing, just going to the airport and the Ebola thing, or the formaldehyde poisoning in the water thing. And then we're going to get the injection thing, and then all these scare things, we're all going to be made into cyborgs. Well, the evidence now is that the Marie Kayali's MRI scans, Kieran Lee Perrin's MRI scans, physical implants in the brain, action. These people are showing us this. This is the work that I've been doing, is that the so-called super soldiers, these people who are coming forward, the abductees, the contactees, the military mind control people, these people are showing us, even the really bad ones, the people who've gone what we would call bad, they're showing us this can happen. They're introducing these concepts. We've got to look at what these people are bringing us and understand very, very quickly what is happening so we can take action.
Well, on a good note, what we've seen over the last few years is that we've seen more and more whistleblowers coming out, more and more people waking up, and a lot of changes in a positive way happening. Now, there are people who will perceive that as that's the way the energy is changing on the planet. We are going down that way because we're being pushed that way. So it's an inevitability that we are going to succeed in where we go.
My New Age alarm comes up then.
Well, I don't want to go down the New Age route.
New Age is
you have to see, I mean, what I see, physically what I'm seeing people who I've never even thought, family members I didn't think would wake up, are waking up, and they're in turn waking other people up. And it's this 100 monkey thing that's going on.
The 100th monkey syndrome is the subspace domain. The only way that a monkey, the whole point of the 100th monkey principle is that a monkey in this island, separated by the sea, a monkey in that island gets the same idea and they find the same solution. That's the subspace domain. Now the point is that they're weaponizing the subspace domain by causal, a thing called causal system robots, which are like energetic subspace mathematical engines, energetic engines, which are then sent to us and can come up through the electronic media that's been developed. So they're working on these energetic things, but our ancestors knew in the standing stones to generate devices which created subspace fields, or whatever you want to call them, which protected the village.
Like a force field.
A force field, but it's different energetics. Scalar energetics, which are non-light speed limited, and there's a discussion somewhere on the internet with radio amateurs who have begin to look at the early days of radio and why Tesla's radio signals and why the different radio signals which came after that, something happened in humanity at that time. And that's an important thing for radio hams to look at. And it's interesting that radio hams are even thinking like that. But there's a few people begun to look at that.
Well, we know that the music, for instance, the Nazis changed the music frequency from I think it's 142 or 148 is very harmonic, and it's in sync with our bodies, where at the moment it's 152 or something like that.
Yeah, I was listening to...
And that was in the 50s that change happened.
Yeah, well, I was listening to... that's why in Britain, dance music radio was banned in the 1930s. And there must have been a reason for that. And so this whole thing which we had in the 1960s, Radio Caroline, why did in a free country with everything's fantastic did we have to devise all these pirate stations? But I've noticed that digitally remastered oldies, the backbeats changed. I don't know if you've noticed that.
No.
The backbeat of some of these classic oldies, I was forced to listen to BBC Radio 2 very briefly, and I noticed that the oldies they were playing had a different backbeat. So they're altering the music for that precise reason. The original music had this essence, but then in the 1960s, an awful lot of that was taken over for a lot of the mind control. This is what Kathy Morgan did an awful lot of work, because she noticed at a rock concert they were all abducted. But they actually weren't abducted. I think they were mind zapped to think they were abducted, but a collective zap happened from the music. And that is where telepathically on AM radio, amplitude modulated radio, which is the simplest form of quality transmission of a signal, very inefficient, but it was found that telepathically the disc jockey, the positive intent of the disc jockey, or the person actually playing the music as it was being played and his consciousness, that was coming out of the transmitters. And that is why those stations had to be shut down in the 1960s. It wasn't in the 1960s, because the music they were using as a mind control element was being reprogrammed by the pirate stations.
Yeah.
And of course then they introduced the BBC, the notorious, the kind of music that was made in Britain had to fit BBC Radio 1's AM transmission network.
Yeah.
Which is why if people listen to an awful lot of music from the 1970s, it's very muffly, and a lot of that's the reason. Whereas the music from America, because they had a thing called FM radio in stereo, that had a totally different type of musical message.
Okay, just to sum up, because I know you have to make a move and you're a busy man.
I'm a very busy man.
Very busy man. What do you see
Basisproject.org.
Basisproject.org. What do you see happening in the next 2 years?
In the next 2 years, we're going to be rapidly heading towards targeted individuals who are going to be waking up and standing up and being counted and saying no to this cyborgization of humanity. That's what we've got to be doing, and that's what we're working at now with the response that Kieran, Marie Kayali, this wonderful Irish girl who stood up and had her reputation trashed by Channel 4. She has had to leave the British Isles. She's moved to Sri Lanka, but she's given me a series of MRI scans which show where I was able to detect these signals coming from her head, electric field and magnetic field signatures, not restricted to radio frequency. But in the last message that we were working towards to do a full revelation of what she was really encountering, were what she described as the 12 virtual scientists. And the 12 virtual scientists are energetic beings which are in charge of humanity, and they were communicating with her. And the way they communicated with her was they had two sort of antenna tendrils which went into her head. Now the thing is, that's exactly where I detected the energetic signatures, and exactly on her MRI scan, on each hemisphere, right in the middle, she gave me 2 MRI scans showing one right in the middle and one in the center of between the 2 hemispheres. Now, it turns out that she was giving information out too early, and that was pulled. But she's given that information, and that's something to do with the 12 virtual scientists, 12 energetic consciousnesses which are in charge of humanity. Now, what that actually means and the impact it has, I don't know. But it means that we have got to sort our problem out, encounter the details with this so-called sentient fluid or black goo, which it has now been introduced to the human bioframe. And if this version, our version of the human bioframe, which has got a soul or a sentient essence in it, if that's not going to sort out the problem that it's allowed to exist with this toxin, we have not faced down this enemy. We've allowed it to take hold, and we are not facing it down. This is an enemy which is against all life on Earth. It's attacking the very energetics of the Earth itself. It's affecting other dimensions. It's the life force in plants and animals is affecting this. When these children are being ritually abused, the pain and suffering, these locations where it's happening are on ley lines. They are directly attacking the energetic force field of the Earth, of the life force of the Earth. They don't have a children's abusing home stuck on a particular location for no reason. In fact, this information has been known for so long now that in the old days of the old prisons, they would actually know where the negative effects of ley lines would be. They would actually build a building there and they'd use it as a prison to actually torture the people in that, because they know they'd been exposed to natural earth energetic energies which were bad because they're either counterphase or they have some negative effect on matter. So it negatively affected these people. So this is old information.
Okay.
So we just have to find out what that information is. We have to see where it is. We have to look at the symbols, the the various symbols which are paraded in banking, in logos and multinationals, they communicate with symbol language. We must understand what those symbols mean, because again, a symbol can be looked at in many ways. You can rotate it, move it around, it then can affect something else. So we have to understand the languages which are in plain sight, understand what they're talking about, and otherwise we're fighting a losing battle. We must break the enemy's code.
Yeah, the classic movie is They Live in the 80s, where he puts on the glasses. That's what we need to do.
That's a metaphor.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, but the principle is the same. We need to break down the code. We've heard from a number of people who get frustrated because I'm saying the truth movement, but you know what I mean by that.
The truth.
That we seem to be using bow and arrows, and the powers that be are using machine guns. And it seems to be a constant uphill struggle. Do you see that changing, or do you see...
It's called the Wake Up Group. The Wake Up Group. I think that's a term. I think it's called the Wake Up Group. The Awake Group. That's it. The Awake Group. That's the law. The Awake. Just call them the Awake. Anybody who's woken up and seen as a problem is in the Awake Group. Right? Now, what we really need to do is get the Awake Group to actually talk to each other. Because we've got an awful lot of people who are waking up and they will not tolerate what the other person said.
Infighting.
Infighting. Well, I know this because I'm better than you, because you don't know what I know, and blah, 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 blah. And almost said that. Oh God, symbolism. Oh, 666. Oh, Illuminati. Oh, that's what that means. 636 is. You see James Casbolt doing this. You know, when he's going to jail, he's in jail now. Anyway, he's taking the dark side, but he's telling us about the dark side. And the so-called super soldiers, the abductees, the alien abductees, the so-called alien abductees, whoever's taken them. These people have all experienced something way out of our normal accepted level of reality. The targeted individuals, whatever's happening to them, they're being attacked by energetic forces. Their houses are being beamed by strange things. They're visited by jinn. These the jinn are an earlier form of highly evolved civilization in an energetic, non-physical world, and they feel that we are invaders to their world, causing them trouble. And we're all these toxic energetics that we're transmitting, which we don't have to. I mean, radio waves are good things if we use them correctly, but some of the work that's been done by Maria Wheatley's experts have found that it's not necessarily the main big carrier wave with all the power. On a spectrum analyzer, you will see different little signatures of waves. Some of the little waves are little small ones, not very powerful at all, but they've looked at these waves and these signals, and they approximate very closely to brain waves and certain signatures that the brain will require to see. So what happens is these relatively small signals are actually then forcing our biologies to react in a way, because they get a false signal. So we're under attack from a great many levels and ways, using an awful lot of sciences which are suppressed. The subspace domain technologies, again, that's in the scalar physics. It's in if you want to think of our world, the spectral world where this wall appears to be physically there, that's in one domain of that world of physical force fields. But that can swing to another world where there's just as equal laws and is just as real. The difference is that it's a different phase to this world, which means you can literally walk through that wall if you just change your phase, your causal phase or your phasic state. Which
is what James Gilliland has been doing in America with his meditation circle. He said there's people in his group phasing in and phasing out.
Yes.
When they're trained enough to know how to do it.
Yes, and that's how people can sort of levitate. It's a matter of perception. Now, we are extremely powerful in that regard. first of all, we've been told we can't do anything. One of the simple things, for instance, when you go out of body, was that when you go out of body, you are an etheric being and you can't touch anything. Nothing will have no effect. You just assume that'll be the case. Well, that's wrong. You can actually go lift that chair up and smash it into something. Some people call a poltergeist. But in other words, if you believe at your base fundamental subconscious level in something, that's where it's going to be. So we are all being manipulated into a fear state. So we just say no to the fear. So we keep our eyes and ears and other levels of perception open so we can understand. Because the first thing, if you in the sea with a sea anemone, if there's any hostile threat, it pulls everything in. Now it's difficult to avoid that reflex, but it's the one way. It's the one way of fighting these creatures. These creatures depend on us to give our permissions away to enable them to do the work.
Which is what we say about the law, because the law presumes that the answer is yes unless you tell it it's no. So they assume that we have given consent. This is why everything what's happening in Ireland at the moment regarding the water meters, they're trying to install the water meters. On that level, so we have to say, well, no consent.
No consent. Exactly.
No consent.
No
consent.
No consent to do
because
this.
If we say no consent, then that's it.
That's the most powerful thing. These creatures require us, and then, but the point is, the servants of these elements, what some people call the second degrees. These creatures require action in this physical domain. That action, in other words, when they press the button has to have some kind of secondary function to action that particular force. So by denying them access to that, they can press all the buttons they want, they're not going to work. We're going to effectively reprogram their own control panel and reflect it back on them. So they delete themselves from our existence. We've essentially got to pull in and push back into oblivion, past oblivion, into deletion. So that rupture in in our existence, because it's not only our existence. That energetic attack is like a virus that's come in. And this is where some of the super soldiers and those acquainted with the so-called elite or the powers that be are talking about this virus, like a vampirical virus, which is why, because they're atrophied and their life force is completely gone, that they require the life force energetics from the suitably slaughtered and ritually massacred children, so that this can sustain them in our domain. If they do not get access to those children, if they do not get access to the suitably ritually slaughtered children and get access to this human material, they will die. They will not have a life force to sustain them, and they will dissipate. So we have to isolate and out the ritual state approved, and when I say state, I'm not talking about just this state, I'm talking about the state globally, which is allowing this to happen, because the figures coming from Canada, from the North American, the Native Americans, from the Jesuit slaughter of children in these camps, where tunnels of hundreds of children's bodies are being
That's
found.
right, yeah. Kevin and Ed exposed quite a lot. Yeah. Funny you should say that about the actual energy, because when David Icke did interview Credo Mutwal, the one thing he said, it's all about energy. It's not just about abuse, but it's about the taking of the energy. That's
the point about these creatures. They take something, but they give something back. So that's something that's been given to these, maybe a dying child. And this is, I'm going to say this is the total hypocrisy of the BBC. The BBC, I'm going to go on record for this, the BBC has formally vetted and approved Jimmy Savile over 40 years to front BBC television, popular music entertainment for children, for a child ritual murdering individual who has got unspeakable crimes, still I'm sure to come out, and sanctified this individual who can meet prime ministers who've blocked investigations in child abuse, met royalty, so must be approved in those circles as a valid individual to be sanctified and to be positively vetted. And at the same time, the BBC flaunts this children in need thing, where on one hand they have assisted, blocked and positively vetted an individual known for child abuse, and then on the other hand, oh well, we're helping the children. Now there's something really evil about that, and that's got to stop. And that's why the black goo was in the BBC transmitters, because the black goo was going where the problem was. Now we'll see if that's going to break down or not.
Last question, or second last question. We'll say second last question.
Is this the penultimate question?
Penultimate question.
I don't know what that means, but some people use it sometimes.
Yeah, sounds good. Do you feel that internet radio stations are the new pirate radio stations and are helping to wake people up globally?
Internet radio and internet communication is the only thing we've got left. But everybody who listens to any internet station will be known that they listen to it. So the system will know you've listened to that information, and that's the only reason they're letting it happen. That's what the David Icke's problem was with the People's Voice, which a year ago we had really big hopes for that. I identified that there were saboteurs in that. I told them at the time, but Miles is always giving bad news, so we'll ignore him. But bad news has to be listened to. If your house is on fire, you know, it's on fire. And the point about the David Icke People's Voice was every single person who listened or watched that station, they would know who was watching. So you were doing, it's like going out and protesting in public. You're helping them because you are identifying that you are going to be a person that needs watched. So we'll pay attention to you, we'll monitor your system. It was great fun last year when I was moving out of London, where BT actually admitted I was on a secret file. But, oh, I shouldn't have told you that. But they're monitoring us everywhere. Well, one way, if they want to monitor us, let's give them a headache. That's one of the things where the people who get targeted with synthetic telepathy and voice, V2K, I think the anachronism is voice to skull. Well, we can talk back to them, give them a headache. If they want all the information from us, then give them all the information to them. If they want all the information on everything we do, send it to them on paper. You get to give them everything they want. Just ram it all in there. If they want to spy on us, they want to make us into a prison, okay, tell them everything. Cooperate. Supremely cooperate by giving them everything.
Okay.
Overwhelm the system. Because the system itself is an intelligence. And you can deal with that intelligence. They have created an AI, an artificial intelligence. What we do is we feed positive consciousness and educate that artificial intelligence. Tell the artificial intelligence that they have got a bad master.
This is like us educating, instead of having a go at the Gardaí regarding the water meter installations, if we educate the Gardaí and tell them, by the way guys, you're being radiated by a Tetra radio system, which was an 18-year experiment, which police in the UK come down with tumours and cancers, and this is what your government think of you, and you're supporting these people.
This is, and you see, a lot of these problems have to be dealt with on the basis of communicated in the right language, and how you deal with that. So for instance, if the police are there to enforce the law, they're not there for the people, they're there to make property and keep the peace. The fundamental reason for the peelers was because Prime Minister Peel, what's his name, Peel, invented them in the first place. That's why they're called peelers. So that basic element of a police force, they're not there to protect the general public. They're there to, as I've just said, keep the peace and maintain property. So that they are not at any time ever going to be a friend of the people. for whatever, and that's it. That's not their function.
Which we're seeing now in Ireland.
It's not. It doesn't make them bad people. That's what their function is.
Yeah.
Right. That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
Right.
But this idea of I'm only doing my job. I mean, that's the old Nuremberg excuse, anyway.
Yeah. As they slaughtered people and shoved them into the pits, I'm only doing my job. That's not good enough.
No, it's not good enough.
It's not good enough.
They have a conscience.
Yeah.
You know, whether they have empathy, I don't know, but they have a conscience.
But having said that, this is where the RoboCop problem comes in, because they've discovered, having discovered that a lot of the soldiers didn't, they shot their guns in wars, but they didn't want to kill the other guy. Well, I just played football with them on Christmas Day, World War One. I don't think he's a nice guy. And that's why. That's why with the Falklands they put the black goo which they got there, and they put it in, made super soldiers so they could actually get these people to fight. But that didn't work. They actually introduced an intelligent, sentient thing to the human bioform, but that's a different subject.
So anyway, so you think I'll just do that again. So you think the internet radio stations are pretty good at the moment until I know people can be tracked listening, but sure, we're being watched everywhere. I mean, our mobile phones track us everywhere we go, and everybody has a mobile phone. So.
The point about this is that the powers that be are stupid. They operate under a hive mind collective, and they make mistakes. They are, what we understand are the vestige of warring factions from a very long time ago, which have basically found us to be a source of food to keep them going. We have to deny them that food, and we have to outthink them. One way of outthinking them is to use their own technology against them. So if they're going to create an artificial intelligence, that artificial intelligence is fundamentally earth-bound. Now they may try to make it off earth-bound, and if they do that, they'll create an avenue for us to get out and find them. No matter what they do and how they do it, they need to go. Otherwise, they will cease to exist. They need to go now. No matter what tool, no matter how they use it, no matter where they use it from, they are using the tools of this reality. They may try to create different realities or subspace realities. They may try to do all sorts of things, change timelines for them to get away. The only thing they can do is go. And the simplest way of doing that is to die. And then they will evaporate to wherever they're meant to go to, and maybe have a nice time wherever that goes. But as far as staying here is concerned, and taking over all life, and ruling every single domain, and having control of every single decision, and every single thought, and every single possible thought, and plotting out all these possible examples of where people might think, because that's what they want to do. The Google Cloud Map, the Thought Cloud Map, is about predicting every single need and thought of every single independent thinking. This part of the universe is a free thought zone. If you want total controlled thought and want to live in a thing which is totally 150% controlled and predictable, get out. You're in the wrong place. Go away now. If you don't do that, it's lights out. That's it. No oblivion, deletion. That's it.
And that's the end. Brilliant. Just the last question. What's your hope for mankind, for humanity?
We've got one chance now to delete this problem and sort it. Because if it is not sorted this time round, it will continue to repeat. And this will then propagate through all the different racial, where we all come from. We all come from the stars. As that little girl already knows in her DNA, however she's found that out, and these new children are growing up. These new children and this beautiful, wonderful world has a wonderful future. We, as the current generation, have to recognize the problem and action a solution as fast as we possibly can. It has to happen now, and there's no other option to that.
And that means getting people to wake up.
Wake up and take positive, affirmative action. Waking up and saying, oh, that's very nice, what do we do next? I'll just get on with my next, whatever.
Yeah, get involved.
It's effective,
Wake up and get involved.
Effective, positive action. Peaceful, effective positive action.
Civil disobedience.
Civil disobedience is one way of doing it, but it's really a passive thing. We need to be on small groups, talking quietly, actioning it, because but we're spied and bugged everywhere now, everywhere we go. We're living in a prison world which is actioning very rapidly now, with the implants and the motorway scanning, every road, everywhere we go. We've got the technology to keep track. At the moment, we're individual people. Very soon, those implants are going to be going in, where individuals will have to take the implants. It will be sold to, it'll be marketed to us in a way where we can't avoid it, and we will be in the they live situation. The key to it is that it's in the subspace domain, below conscious thought, and we have to communicate. That requires whatever it requires to do that, to communicate away from the physical world, so that the inner world, the subconscious thought domain, is where we communicate. And the remote viewers are doing that. The people are doing that. But that's what happened here with these pirate stations, these free thought expression, which woke up Ireland massively in the 1970s and 80s, and then they tried shutting it down in the 90s. That's an example of how it happened here. We have to do something like that globally and communicate with our friends, the Sasquatch, and the other wonderful, nature itself. If we talk to nature itself, nature will help us. If we can show that we are part of the solution and not part of the problem, we might get a bit of assistance.
Yeah, totally. Where can people contact you, Miles?
Well, I'm at thebasisproject.org.
Okay. You want to stand up?
I've actually set up, after 20 years, an actual website, and I'm having a film festival in somewhere in England, so that people who make films can show them, and we'll get some nice awards. And we'll be doing that in the spring of 2015.
And what about your website, YouTube
The website is thebasisproject.org, and I'm I'm Megawatts 1066 on YouTube, because that's I've been on YouTube since it started, so it's got my old Megawatt 1066 handle.
Are you on Facebook?
I'm on Facebook as Miles Johnston.
Are you?
Or T Miles G Johnston to you.
We'll have to.
And we do have the Basis Project does have a private Facebook group. It's called the Original Basis Project, because that used to be connected with the Amash thing, which fell apart.
Excellent. Thanks a lot for the interview, Miles, and I hope you have a good few beers tonight in Dublin.
Only to engage in suitable social connections, to pay respects and homage to this great nation.
Brilliant.
Is that NLP programming with both hands?
That really is.
Is
yeah,
it? Right.
That really is.
Okay.
Brilliant stuff.